My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to TheAstroHistorian, a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into one of the most recent additions to the lore and something that has fundamentally changed the universe of Star Citizen. That is, Regeneration. Before we get started, I want to personally thank y'all for your continued support. I'm starting to see y'all promoting these videos far and wide within the Star Citizen community, and that has led to some massive growth. Over 16,000 subscribers and rising. So if you're one of the new viewers and this is your second time you've watched one of my videos, then hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when these are released. Now let's dive into the complex moral, spiritual, and legal issues of regeneration. Now, I've already done a video on the lore behind Regeneration, which I would suggest you take a look at if you want to know the details behind it, but I will give a brief overview for those who don't know. Regeneration is how the writers of Star Citizen explain respawn in the game. The actual tech and science behind the process is very new, only having been successfully tested in 2949, barely 3 years ago in modern lore, but is spread all over the Empire since. The tech itself is a combination of two different advancements. Dr. Aka Ibrahim is a neurologist who had dedicated his life to restoring the brain and body functions after traumatic injuries. However, he wanted more than just to let patients think again. He wanted to restore their personalities. His work has advanced medical science, but he wasn't able to make his dream a reality until the UEE military contracted him in 2946 after they discovered and recovered Van Duel bioscanning technology during a secret operation. Dr. Ibrahim was able to reverse engineer the tech to imprint the mind and personality of a person to the device, an imprint that updates in real time through interspace for an almost instant connection, thus copying someone one for one onto a device which has been called the Ibrahim Sphere. Many attempts were made by Ibrahim to download his personality into another body, but so far all have failed, as the only way to do it would be to sever the connection with the living creature, which could only happen upon death. Needless to say, we don't know a lot about how the Ibrahim spheres operate, just that they work. This leads to some complicated questions about the morality of the devices and the legal consequences of them, which we will tackle later. What is important to remember is that this is just a scanning and storage device, and not the device that allows for regen to occur physically. So while we know the device is Van Duel in origin, we don't fully know if they use the tech the same way humanity has. The second part of the recipe that makes regen work is rapid printing biogel, also known as Regen serum, made by Bioticorp. Bioticorp was founded by two medical researchers, Dio Nicholas and Ted Santos, from the Scalinger School of Medicine on Redder. Since its founding, the company has been tackling larger-scale issues in medicine, creating the first Autodoc, the Vitalis Pro medical scanner, and Pure Life anti-contamination chamber. Its biggest accomplishment before Regen serum was Project Calliope, which made outpatient reconstructive surgery easy and affordable, allowing for anyone to look however they liked at just about any time. This is the in-lore explanation for the character customization feature, which is likely going to be accessible even after you complete your character through some kind of medical treatment. In the 2940s, the company developed a rapid printing technology that allowed them to make any part of the human body fast and easy, though not without expense. This was likely originally designed to make replacement limbs and organs easy with the military in mind. However, once Dr. Ibrahim had finished his work, the UEE military brought the two together in order to print a whole human and bring them back from the dead. The first successful regen was in 2949. When Leilani Addison was elected imperator in 2950, she immediately made the technology free, meaning anyone in the UEE with the right materials could build an Ibrahim sphere and make regen serum. Addison is a zealot when it comes to new technology. For instance, she firmly believes that the ban on artificial intelligence should be lifted, as she thinks it will improve humanity as a whole. So it's very in her character to make such a tech public, no matter the consequences. This is where we start to dip into the discussion and theory territory, because when the writers wrote this in to explain respawning in the game, they knew that a technology like this had to develop recently and make a major impact on the story of the universe. so they have jumped headfirst into that, with Regen set to be a large plot point in the game's future. So we're going to look into the impacts of what we know so far and what might develop as the story continues further. To start, I'm going to clarify some things. This isn't cloning. Cloning is a process of replicating a living creature using the same cells, making a copy of that person on a molecular level, and requires that creature to develop into maturity naturally from an infant to an adult. This also isn't sleeving like we see in cyberpunk universes, as you aren't functionally immortal. There is a limit to how many times you can regen, and the psychological trauma of dying multiple times will cause errors in the process, requiring artificial and replacement limbs to be grafted on. And eventually, these trauma echoes, as they are called, will build up to such a degree that a person can no longer be regenerated. What this means is that regen, at its core, is about extending life, not immortality. However, this extension comes at a cost, and brings up many ethical, moral, political, and religious issues. One of the impacts I mentioned in my previous video was on the military. Death no longer is as permanent for those who serve in war zones, being able to come back from any fate imaginable. This does have some benefits, as a mistake can become a learning experience rather than be fatal. But as a viewer pointed out, war is not fought in a clean manner, even today. In the far future, with species like the Vandul preferring melee combat over ranged, and all manner of exotic weaponry readily available to the average person, the average soldier would be subjugated to torturous deaths. Gut shots, bleeding out, burning alive, starving to death, asphyxiation, and much, much more. The trauma of receiving these wounds today is enough for many to suffer lifelong post-traumatic stress disorder. Even just witnessing these kinds of horrific wounds and deaths can also create PTSD. So it's not without accident that the term for the echoes that corrupt the regen process is trauma echoes. It is very obvious that regen creates at least some kind of PTSD as part of the process. The human mind just isn't designed to handle that kind of stress. So while it may be a boon, it is also likely to cause even more cases of PTSD among frontline troops, making them less effective rather than more effective. It also does reduce the risk of service though, which may have a knock-on effect of more people being willing to enlist to get citizenship, as the process has a reduced risk. This may lead to a change in citizenship system or a reduced number of people getting citizenship for service, as service in the military isn't a guarantee of citizenship, simply the most accessible method to achieve it. The other issues have shown up in lore with religious groups calling the Ibrahim Sphere a soul capture device, which does sound like that's what the device does in layman's terms. It stores everything that makes you who you are, and prevents that from disappearing when your physical body dies. The process of accumulating trauma echoes could also be seen as an erosion of the soul philosophically, grinding it down until it's utterly destroyed. So there is a moral argument against the device, especially for those who are religious. Another issue is crime. Since Addison made the devices widely available to anyone with the right resources, criminals now have an easy way of getting out of getting caught. We know from dispatches between the hacker and data broker Skyer Fakius and the outlaw Teak that outlaws have begun to off themselves to avoid getting caught. Teak apologetically reached out to Skyer recently, asking for forgiveness for offing himself mid-job and ruining it in order to prevent getting caught, a move that displeased Skyer so much that not only did he demand 3 times the rate in order to give Teak the info he wanted, but he instantly double-crossed him by getting a bounty hunter to buy the info on Teak's whereabouts. So it's become at least somewhat common for outlaws to use regen as a literal get-out-of-jail-free card. This means it's much harder to stop criminals, with the only reliable way being to incapacitate them with less than lethal weaponry. This will likely lead to another spike in criminal activity, as now, like everyone else, death doesn't stop a rebel, outlaw, pirate, or syndicate member. Lastly, there is a legal issue, a political ship of Theseus, if you will. The basic gist of the Ship of Theseus is that if you have a ship that you keep around for hundreds of years, replacing parts that break or rot, you eventually have replaced literally every part of that ship with something new. So does that make it the same ship that you started with? This question usually tackles the concepts of identity, but in Star Citizen, it extends beyond that to legal identity. The UEE has opened that Pandora's box, as the question of if you are the same person you are when you regenerate has become a very literal problem. It's not settled law as of now, with companies like Hurston Dynamics stating that Regeneration does not get its employees out of their lifetime contracts. A recent case involving an actor and a production company has thrust this into being a more immediate legal issue. You see, the actor took to preparing their role in a survival movie to the extreme, dying multiple times after putting themselves into increasingly impossible survival tasks. Eventually, the producers replaced the actor, but forgot that part of their contract was that they were to be paid no matter what happened to the production. With the production already troubled and bleeding funds, the studio countered by claiming that the actor was not the same person who signed the contract due to their death, so they were not entitled to pay them. While it seems those in the legal profession are hoping the case is settled out of court, they bring up the legal time bomb this sets into motion. If it goes to court, the ruling would send ripples through the UEE, as what it means to be a legal person would change. Regen could result in a revocation of a person's citizenship. Criminals could be able to argue they aren't culpable for the crimes they committed in literally another life, and Hurston alone would likely be ruined by that ruling. We still don't know the consequences that Regen will have for the universe of the game. Many lingering questions remain. For instance, how will it impact players and NPCs, and does it even work with non-humans like the Devarin, the Banu, or the Xi'an? These are questions that the narrative team has yet to answer, but will likely continue to flesh out over time. And as more and more lore is being added to the game, we will likely start to see these questions answered in the actual game itself soon. I hope you enjoyed this look at the complex new additions to Star Citizen lore. I'd also like to thank those Patreons on screen now for helping make this all possible. If you want to join them, the link is in the description. For as little as $5 a month, you can get early access to videos, including a timed exclusive covering the entire history of the Star Citizen universe, whose first episode has recently been released to the public. Check it out and see what $5 a month will get you. For now, let me know what you think about Regeneration in the comments below. And as always, remember, ex Historia ad Astra.